This is your baby.
Right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. This is the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee, and we're in meeting room 1 in County Hall, for those that are wondering why it doesn't look like the main chamber. First of all, we've got a number of officers in the room that will be putting forward the details, and thank you for them for the work they've done, and also for attending this evening. Can I please remind non-committee members that they'll be given the opportunity to speak before the committee debate on each item. Now, for the last few meetings, we've been fairly relaxed on that, so I will adopt Not Lacey Clark's position, and if somebody wants to speak whilst the debate is going, that's online, I see we've got a number of councillors online. If they let us know, then I'll talk to Democratic Services as to whether I'm allowed to bring you in, but I'm sure the answer will be yes. As each officer speaks, can I ask that you introduce yourself, and obviously members to introduce themselves the first time they speak on each item. Because of the time of the last meeting, which I was not in attendance of, we put in a proviso that between item 6 and 7, there will be a 15-minute break. If the debate on the first item goes on too long, I might have to use that, because we're only allowed to be going for so long before we have to take a break. But I'll take direction from Democratic Services. Both items 6 and 7 have the potential to go into exempt business if the discussion focuses on specific properties, car parks, or charging points. If we move into exempt, the public and the press will be asked to leave the meeting while the item of business is considered. Any live streaming will end at this juncture. So I'm hopeful that we can keep it out of exempt, because I don't want to get into too much detail on individual items. We're here to discuss the broader picture, not individuals. We can always ask the officers concerned to come back to us with a statement afterwards that will answer that, or I still have the option, if needed, to defer that item to the next meeting. But I'm hopeful we can get through this fairly easily tonight. Okay. The first item on the agenda is apologies.
So we've received apologies from councillors Not Lacey Clark, David Took and Sarah Williams.
And item 2 is the minutes. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read through the fairly lengthy minutes. Are there any issues that have been raised from those minutes, or can I take them as accepted?
Happy, sir.
Right, they're accepted. Declarations of interest. If any member has any declaration of interest they wish to make, and if so, the action they will take. So has anybody got a declaration of interest? Yes, Councillor Bartlett.
Just in case it does come up, I'm on the shareholder committee for the Dorset Innovation Park, just in case it comes up.
Any other declarations of interest?
Dorset Innovation Park, once again, if it comes up, I'm an executive member of the South Dorset Conservative Association, who is a tenant of the...
Okay. If during the meeting you think you may be needing to declare, please let me know so I can bring that in as a later item on the agenda. We don't want to get anybody into trouble. Right. Item 4 on the agenda is public participation, and there's no questions been received. Item 5 is questions from councillors. No questions received. Hopefully everybody can understand what I'm saying. For those that don't know, I've had quite a few teeth removed this last week, and it's making my speech a little bit slurred, but hopefully it's still audible to everybody. Normally people hear me anyway. Right, item 6, empty properties update. If you'd like to put forward your title, what you do, and the show's yours.
My name is Jess Maskery and I am Head of Assets and Council. We provided a report and various appendices and a dashboard ahead of the meeting. More than happy to answer any questions that folk have. I would note that our property management records are held on the council's corporate property database, which is Civica Property Management. Housing management records are held on Hume, which is housing management software, and we have worked closely with housing colleagues to ensure that whilst these two separate systems, they're completely separate, but we've managed to work together to verify the data in both systems and to produce a dashboard that combines the data across the both of the systems. You'll see in the report that the Dorset Council Asset Register contains 6,360 records, of which 5,087 are active properties. So that means that 1,273 of those records on the asset register refer to sites which have been sold, transferred, or leases that have been given up since the records commenced prior to local government reorganisation. At the point of writing the reports on the 10th of September, there were 115 properties that are empty across the two data sets. 69 of these are housing properties, so that represents a vacancy rate of under 2%, and 46 are housing residential properties. I've also detailed within the report a bit of information about the reasons why properties are empty, and within the report as well, there is information about the average duration of time for which those properties remain empty. There are a number of pieces of work underway to reduce those vacancy periods, including increased capacity within the asset strategy function. So we have asset strategy business partners being recruited currently. They will drive forward the asset reviews, which are detailed within the report. That asset review process is the process by which we make recommendations as to the future use of empty properties. We've also got a newly set up transfers and disposals team who will drive forward transfers and disposals, surprisingly enough, given the title of the team. And you will see from the report that a number of the empty properties that are sitting empty are disposals. And we have a new operating model in the estates team to improve the reletting timescales. Additionally, we've worked very closely with housing colleagues over the past 12 months and put in place a new voids management process, which has significantly reduced turnaround times for void temporary accommodation properties. And those were the main points that I wanted to pick out from the report, but I'm very happy to take questions on the other details.
Okay. If I may, I'm going to kick off on a few things first. Because this will go out to the public won't understand your comment about the DC housing properties that are vacant. So I think we need to give some air to that. Otherwise, they'll be wondering why we've got a housing shortage and we've got empty properties. So can somebody give me an update on that?
Yeah, I think Andrew is probably best.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Billany, I'm the Corporate Director for Housing and Safety. So as Jess has said, we work pretty closely across the boards between the Housing Assets team. I can explain the number of empty properties within our estate. The nature of those properties are temporary accommodation. They're not permanent let accommodation, so they're not for people who are going to be living there for 10, 20 years. We use that as a set of properties which will be used temporarily for people who are need immediate place to live whilst we find settled solutions. So there will be a natural churn of a turnover of people moving in, moving out, and periods of time when those properties are empty. I'd like to give reassurance to the committee that we've benchmarked the information that you'll see in the paper. There's targets that we're setting ourselves against, and broadly speaking, we're on that level, middle of the pack, if you like, around the target that's the sort of average performance across the country for this type of accommodation. It's a different. If we were letting those as permanent lettings, housing for people for life, I'd be concerned at that level of empty properties. But as we speak at the moment, the improvement that Jess has referred to takes us to a position where we're in the middle of the pack, as I would describe, which is an improvement from where we were, say, 9 months ago, a year ago, where turnover was high. So we've improved the position that we're in. You can always improve, but I think we've got a decent system in place. And you'll have seen at Cabinet last week, I think, recent Cabinet, including the appointment of a new contract. So we're tightening the process is something that's making decent progress. Happy to drill further into that.
No, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to make one point for members of the public who will watch this on YouTube afterwards. The 46 housing properties that are vacant was a number on the 10th of the 9th, 25. So that isn't, that would mean that on that particular day, that's how many properties we've got empty. The following day, we might not have 10 of those empty, or it could go up even higher. I just want to make sure that the public will understand that that number is on that particular day and it's not a general. Okay. Andrew?
Just to reinforce, that's an important thing to confirm. It's a moving picture, which we monitor on a weekly basis to make sure we minimise that waiting period. And sometimes whether it's sometimes a delay on the housing side of the spectrum is there's a gap between a particular type of property, maybe a 3 or a 4 bedroom house, where we sometimes have to take time to get persons settled and ready to move in. So there is a period of work, a bit of work done on the housing management side as well as the repair side.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Right, I'm going to see whether anybody that is not on the committee wants to make a comment. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. I just look for some assurance, really. Appreciating the fact that the local government authorities are in the position they're in, and this authority is no different financially, the position that we're all in. I'm just looking for an assurance that we won't be selling properties without giving regard to the market town strategies that we've been talking about, which I appreciate has been delayed, I think primarily due to officer capacity to do that piece of work. And some of those properties that we own within those market towns are going to be really significant in how we do that strategy. So it's just for an assurance around that, please, Chairman.
Yes.
So the asset review process that we take all of those empty properties through looks at a huge variety of different criteria, including the market town initiatives and regeneration and economic development. So it aligns with the council priorities. It considers the social economic value as well as the financial value of future use of the asset.
So I think thank you. I think what I'm looking for is that those properties will still be there when we finally manage to get round to doing that strategic review of the market towns.
The process would take that into account. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Happy with that? Any other questions? Right, I've got in front of me. I'll see whether I can pick up the numbers. Jane first. Linda second. Councillor Somper, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. Quick question. And I couldn't find in the appendix or in the paper, although it may be in there and I've missed it, the length of time that the properties on the list have been vacant.
So we've provided within the paper the average length of time that properties in different categories have remained vacant. It's in section 5.2. So for our vacant lettable units, they have been vacant. The ones that are vacant have been vacant for an average of 25 months. for properties held for review, 35 months, for properties held for repurposing, 56 months, and for properties held for disposal, 13 months.
So in the appendix that is attached with the lists and the descriptions, it's not in there for each individual one, obviously.
No, it's not included in that appendices, no. But we can, if there are individual properties that you're interested in, I can provide that information outside of the meeting.
It's not that I'm particularly interested. I'm just thinking I don't sit on this committee, but I think for the purposes of the committee members, it might have been helpful to have that, because there may be some, as you say, these are averages, so it's hard to work out exactly where there may be particular blockages, and asking what's caused those delays, anything that's significant, particularly in relation to housing. There'll obviously be commercial properties and other properties where there are very good reasons why, but others where members might want to understand a bit more detail of that. And perhaps when you present it again, you might be able to do that. I don't know how difficult that would be, but that's for committee members.
If I can come in on that, Councillor Zumba. It's unusual calling you Councillor Zumba. Jane, item 2.5.2 is showing the median period is 37 months on all properties. I must admit, when I read this report myself, I had a concern over vacant lettable units, 25 months average. Property held for asset review, 35 months average. Property held for repurposing, 56 months average. And property held for disposal, 13 months average.
Averages, that's what I mean. They're averages. So there will be some which are very long periods of time.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Some could be 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
And some could be a lot longer. I
Yeah,
think
so
at some stage, we're going to ask the property and assets team to come back with some more detail on that, because we need to understand why these properties are hanging about a bit too long. The one that concerns me most of all is the property held for repurposing, because that is now averaging 56 months. And, that's a real concern for me, because there are opportunities out there for us to repurpose them for all sorts of things. And I would ask Councillor Biggs, who unfortunately can't make it tonight. He has given his apologies, but he's got a prior appointment. But I'm going to be asking him to look into that and report back to us at a future meeting. But thank you for your question, Jane. Right, I believe I've got Belinda next. Belinda?
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me because I'm on my phone. Does that?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Loud and clear.
Okay, lovely. Sorry, apologies. I have not been through Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth, and I've not been through the appendices, but I'm curious to know whether properties that are not necessarily empty, but very, very underused. So, for example, a garage that is supposedly used for storage, but which nobody has seen any activity in for years and years, or our children's centre, which has got a couple of groups using it, but it's not being used as a children's centre. Would they classify as empty or not?
So they wouldn't classify, they wouldn't be categorised as empty in this report because they have some usage, but properties with very, very low usage would be picked up through that rolling asset review process, which always considers best future use. So a property which is only being used for a couple of events a week, we would work with those service providers to see whether those could be relocated to another property, thereby freeing up that property for potential repurposing, disposal, redevelopment, use for other delivery.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Before we move off this particular subject, I think it's important that we point out that we don't have any numbers of each property. It's just properties held. That could be one property, it could be 20 properties. So we don't have the number there, which gives us the what the average will be. And one of my concerns is I know of one particular property, which several people around this table used to use as East Dorset Council offices. That's been on the market for a long, long time, but has been through all sorts of problems in as much as there's a piece of land attached to it that we had to try and buy from the owner. Unfortunately, he passed away, so that caused us another delay. And then, unfortunately, the other owner passed away as well. And these are the sort of delays that when you're disposing of properties, you can face. But I think I'm right in saying that we're close to disposal of that one now. So that because it's been on the market for so long, that would give a false picture on the averages. So as I say, if we can, I'd like you to let us have obviously vacant lettable units. Is that 1 or 100? Because I'm
27.
27.
Yeah.
So where do I find that on the report?
It's in 2.5.1.
Right. Sorry, is that? So on the disposal, which is the one I'm more interested in, you've got 8 empty spaces, 8 empty properties on the disposal transfer list with disposals in progress.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to leave that now, but I will want to ask a question on how far away we are from those being disposed of. And because if we're going to be another couple of years, then that's something that I think we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, if I may,
Please.
each disposal is unique and is, as you've pointed out, not everything is within the control of the council. So it is sometimes challenging to predict how soon a disposal will happen. But we can give you some kind of indication as to the likely.
Yeah.
Some of them are very complex.
I'll apologise to you because on my screen I've got a note of item 2.5251, and of course, but I'm reading from a piece of paper which hasn't got the same annotations on it. Right, that's everybody from the screen. So unless a non-committee member has a question now, I'm going to go into the committee process and Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you very much. Touch on what Councillor Borden said in terms of underused assets, and I think it obviously is something for another day. We have a number of assets in terms of offices, including, I must say, sometimes you come into this building and there's vast amounts of it are being underused. There's a former youth club that's becoming a family hub in my ward that was massively underused, now going to be further used a lot more. I think that's something else we have to look at is assets that aren't empty but are massively underused, and I think they should be looked at together with empty assets and see if anything can be linked up in that way. But coming back onto the paper, it says in the paper that a lack of capacity within the strategic asset management function has resulted in some delay to asset reviews, and we now have an asset disposal team. Can I ask how are we going to measure the success of that team in dealing with vacant properties?
So the transfers and disposals team will measure the success of that team in terms of the number of transfers and disposals that they achieve over a period of time. They're currently working up a new disposals and transfers pipeline with a report coming to Cabinet in November. In terms of the strategic asset management team, that is a team of asset strategy business partners who are currently being recruited, who will run the asset review processes, which will look at, in particular, empty and underused properties. We have a KPI on that around the number of asset reviews completed, but there will be additional measures around how many properties are repurposed, how many are recommended for redevelopment or for disposal or transfer.
I'll get back in.
Please do. Yeah.
How will buildings that are empty be prioritised? They're going to be prioritised on the value and the cost, or are they going to be prioritised on the length of time they've been empty?
Likely be a combination.
Right.
So what we're doing with disposals pipeline, for example, is looking at having a mixture of the more complex disposals, which are inevitably more they're higher value, and other disposals that can come through more quickly. And the same for the repurposing. But it will each review takes into account the impact across not only financial but council priorities and other associated criteria.
Last one, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Last one. It says on the financial implications that the cost for 24-25 was 467,000. Those costs, is that just the insurance rates, risk assessment insurance, or does that include officer time in dealing with
it?
It
Doesn't include officer time, so that's things like rates,
insurance,
electricity. We self-insure.
Yeah.
Those holding costs, not officer time.
Thank you.
For the benefit of the public, the total vacant sites is 27 vacant lettable units, 24 empty properties, 14 empty properties held for repurposing, and 8 empty properties. So whilst when you look at the months they're being vacant, you could get very concerned at that number. It's not a vast amount of properties when you look at the total property listing that you identified at the beginning of your report. So I just want to keep that in proportion. Right, any other member? Craig.
Just a fairly open question, really, to maybe give an opportunity to provide a positive update on the progress of the housing voids management team. So I know in 2024 looked at progress of empty residential properties. I can see the numbers down from the last time we looked, but like I said, a fairly open question, really. How is that going?
Well, it's been very much a collaborative effort between assets and property and housing colleagues. From the assets and property perspective, we've been focused on the repairs element. So we've worked with a specialist contractor to ensure that those repairs are being undertaken quickly, so that those void properties can be handed back in a fully compliant state to housing colleagues as quickly as possible, so that they can then be relet for temporary accommodation. Andrew, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Just to reinforce the point, and just also to one of the specific points that's improved is we've got that tightness around that weekly, which is not daily, weekly review of progress. So there isn't a key sitting in a dashboard of a car, or sometimes void periods can be delayed if links in the chain and then left waiting. It sounds very simple, but making sure we're tight and making sure we're managing it across the disciplines, across the teams. So that's been a significant improvement from where we were a few years ago.
Over there?
Yeah, a follow up.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So, kind of follow up question I was going to ask with regards to void housing stock. So the portal's showing 46 at the moment, I think, which is obviously coming down, which is great. Is there much thought about? So first of all, I appreciate there will always be some voids because people move out. It takes time to get people back in. But is there much thought into the planning of what happens next once we get to a point that the contractors are repairing these properties and then we're able to repurpose them to housing? Is there how are we starting to move on to that kind of next phase, I guess?
So the 46 housing properties, the 46 housing properties that are void are generally used as temporary accommodation, aren't they? So
they are. Just forgive me, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Are we when you say next phase?
Well, I guess maybe part of the answer might be what I was referring to. So at the moment, some of those void properties are they classed as void because we are permanently using them as temporary accommodation, or are they void because they're genuinely empty? Hopefully that number will.
I'm going to I'll break it down to an individual property. So we've leased a 3-bedroom house for purposes. It will be used for temporary accommodation for the foreseeable future. So, and there will be for temporary accommodation because we've performed quite well at moving people on to settle. So that what we expect to do is to use that 3-bedroom house for genuinely temporary use. So a family may stay there for 4 months and then move on, and put it back into shape and move on to the next family. So the phase there isn't a sort of end phase of it becoming a permanent home for somebody, because that's not the nature of that property. If I'm understanding the gist.
No, I think it is.
Keeping it as a permanent. It's permanent properties that we have. We use it for a series of people living there temporarily. So
then I guess the void properties that, for example, we're looking at just now in the portal, that would be part of the portfolio holders' kind of bigger plan in terms of moving people from B&Bs into those void properties, and then on to hopefully more sustainable, suitable housing through associations.
If I can come in, Chair, Bill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. My dream for this lot is that when somebody comes to the council and needs temporary and is homeless, we can say, we can put you straight into a permanent house where they can have a sustainable tenancy and live long term. Using temporary accommodation of any type, whether it's B&B, whether it's one of our temporary houses, isn't ideal by a long way. Certainly the houses that we've got, we often have children in there, and moving them from one place to another is far from ideal. And that's all part of the new models of housing delivery that we're pushing through at the moment, which there'll be more stuff coming through later on this year, next year, sort of with the details of that.
Thank you. So I guess just the kind of conclusion point I make, and this may be on me because the portal, I'm getting used to it. So if we have housing stock that we will class as void stock, but actually it's not really void because it's almost a constant temporary housing, is there a way of just being able to sort of clarify that number for members? Because to me, I look at this and think that's 46 empty houses, which it may be because they're still being repaired. You know, if you sort of drill down to the reasons why they're void, some of them aren't actually necessarily void, and it'd be nice to kind of understand that kind of deeper level. And some of them may genuinely be empty because we're selling them or they're unfit for habitation. I'm just wondering if, you know, is it an observation more than a question, really? But I won't try and answer it.
Part of the reason why we've kept the housing data separate in the dashboard is to try and help to show that distinction.
Yeah.
Because that housing data is the temporary accommodation data. We've got residential property. We don't have residential properties within the non-housing data set.
Yeah. And I think just on that, the temporary accommodation property, we would look at it being let for as short a time as possible. We're trying to move these people on as quickly as possible and get them into settled accommodation. So sometimes they may only be in there for a couple of months, 6 months, and then we've got the gap between the key to key when it's void. So if you look at it that way, I think the majority of TA is for less than 2 years. Got a few that have been in around about 2 years, but the shorter we can shrink that, the better for the family. This has all got to be about what is better for them, what is good for them. And having people in temporary accommodation isn't what we should be doing. It's just a fact of life at the moment. So if we can drive all this forward, hopefully at some time, I live in hope that we don't need much temporary accommodation. We will always need some, because there will always be somebody arrives at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon that has got a Section 21 eviction notice and hasn't come to us earlier. So we're always going to need some. There's always going to be the odd case. But a lot of it we're managing now by getting people to come to us sooner and then managing it through the prevention route. So our use of TA is reducing, but it will always be needed because that's just the nature of the beast.
Thank you.
I think, did you want to come in, Andrew?
No, that's
yeah. Sorry, I actually want to defend the council in regards to temporary housing. We shouldn't really have a large need for temporary housing, and I think Councillor knows where I'm going to start bashing now. If housing associations didn't leave their properties vacant for so long and then end up selling them off, we aren't the biggest provider of housing in this county. We hand that over to RPs, and we get stick about temporary accommodation, and I understand why. But if registered providers who have the facilities, the finance, and all the background in terms of the infrastructure and renewable housing, did more in terms of turning around their empty properties, we wouldn't have such the issue that we are getting the blame for. There's three empty properties in my ward that have been empty for months, one a year. All three of them are currently up for sale from housing associations. If we did that, we'd be lynched. But these RPs can get away with it. Never miss an opportunity on that one.
Who'd like to come back on that? Andrew?
I'm going to come back, if you forgive me, to come back briefly on the point before, just around, because I know that the people in health scrutiny committee periodically looks at the nature of temporary accommodation and why it's that. So I just wanted to add a little point about why we need it. It's sometimes the period of time when somebody's, say, homeless on a Friday and comes to us, there needs to be a period of time when we need to be assessing what their needs are. So sometimes there needs to be a period of time in temporary accommodation, short-term temporary, to make sure that's assessed so the right solution is made for somebody. Just too much detail probably for this committee, but it's there's a reason why we have it as temporary. So ideally you move somebody straight into a permanent home, but sometimes it's there to review their position. And on Councillor Leary's point, I think it came up, didn't it, at the cabinet last week, and we share your concern. So we'll.
There's a stronger word than concerned.
We're picking up the particular items of disposals with the housing associations that you've been mentioning.
If I could just publicly thank you for your question, because it's really, really useful. Keep talking to us.
I've been told that before.
I know, it comes as a bit of a shock that I'm agreeing with your councillor. But on
Sticking to the agenda. Can I ask you a question? Having these empty properties, does that mean that we need to put some impetus behind it to get them back on the market so we can use them, which would then mean we wouldn't unnecessarily be placing people in B&Bs? Does that work that way, Andrew?
Yeah, just it's all available housing is useful to us, obviously, and useful to people on the housing register and homeless families. So, yeah, in short, yes. So, why we're raising the issue of disposals with the housing associations, we rely on. So, it's a 3-bedroom house. We rely on that 3-bedroom house to stop somebody being in temporary accommodation or stop people being in bed and breakfast. So, short answer is yes. It's all part of that bigger supply. And I would say, whilst criticising housing associations here, they build us a lot of homes every year, so we rely on that supply homes, and we want that to be as many as possible, don't we? So if I'm understanding the question, so yeah, every empty home, every empty permanent home is one less property we have available to people on our register.
No, I'm very aware that it's the council's ambition not to have people in B&Bs, and I'm just trying to give some help on saying that perhaps we should be looking at this as a priority to get these various residencies back up to scratch and on the market. If that's any help, certainly it'll be one of the things that I should be asking Anthony to put on our list for watching for the future.
Please keep an eye on it, but also bear in mind that currently we're one of the top 5 councils across the country for our reduction in our use of B&B. The staff that we've got at the moment are absolutely amazing. They do a huge amount of work in prevention. And if we can stop people coming into B&B or temporary accommodation in the first place, that is the ideal. And if people will come to us as early as possible, if they've got a slight inclination that they may be homeless in 6 months' time, we can then work with them and really basically tackle the homelessness problem. Problems come when somebody comes to 5 o'clock on 4 o'clock on a Friday night and I'm homeless and here's my Section 21 notice. So through our homelessness, please keep an eye on us by all means. But at the moment, we're doing really well.
And congratulations on that. My point is that we're showing 46 properties that we can't use at the moment. So what do we need to do to get those back into a livable condition. So I'm going to ask Jess.
It's not quite, sorry, I'm jumping in ahead of Jess. It's not 46 properties we're not using. They're just empty at the moment. And you'll see in the, Jess can probably explain this better because it's in the paper. It shows that this is describing the turnover. So that I think that I'm pleased to say we don't have properties sat there. They've been either refurbished or in the process of being relet.
So just again for clarity, if I may, this 46 was taken on a particular day for the amount we've got. So the following day it could have been 26.
It was 40 in August.
Yeah.
It's gone up.
Okay.
We'll go back down.
Please take it that this committee is trying to help to get some of these problems resolved. And if it's a case of resource, then that's something that we need to look at going forward. Right, I'm going to go back to item 5, financial implications, 5.1. 467,100, the cost of holding these empty properties. Where it's not the, I'm going to use a word that I'm probably going to regret in a minute, but where it's not the fault of property and assets, if the fault lies elsewhere, do we recharge those costs to that particular department?
So when a property is held for repurposing, so it's been allocated to another directorate for future use, then that department covers those holding costs. So that 467,100 is the total cost. Some is from the assets and property budget, but where they're held for repurposing, it comes from that services budget.
Yeah, the thing I was mostly concerned because we're place resources. Is that place services could have been picking up that bill, and it's a bill that doesn't belong to them. So I'm glad you answered that. Just scroll down, see what else I've written on here. Right. The public won't be seeing this, but I can mention it in an outlined way. I'm slightly concerned on the report, some of the terminology we're using. When you look under tenure description, there's many of them that I don't actually understand, and I should and want to. So can we look at that again? I'm not asking for something tonight. Can we look at that again and look at the descriptions and perhaps look at a better description? Because I understand freehold, I understand leasehold, but there are certain terminologies that we're using on this that I don't understand. So can you make it a bit more simple for me?
We can certainly provide definitions. Yes, I
Please.
totally accept that because I think what was requested was a download from the corporate property database, which inevitably is a download that comes with property jargon, shall we say, property terminology. So yeah, we provided some definitions of categories, but we can add in some definitions of the tenure type because I recognise that is complicated.
And the other thing I'd like to see on here, if we can, is because we're paying the rates or the council tax or the business rates, I'd like to see what those properties are valued at, if that's possible.
That's challenging because the value is different for different purposes, but as part of asset reviews, we will value properties in existing use values and for the value if it's to be disposed of or if it's to be developed. And that can be shared as part of those asset reviews, definitely. But to provide a full value list of everything on the database is particularly challenging because it depends on what you're valuing it for.
I think coming back to it, public have a right to know if we've got X number of properties that are empty, how much we're having to pay ourselves in council tax or whatever. I know the business rates don't all come to us, which again, I often feel like shouting from the top of the roofs because and as members, we get moaned at for the business rates, and yet we don't have the benefit of all that money. That goes to somebody in London. But I would like to see, if possible, some better descriptions. But you've put a lot of work into this, and I appreciate it. Can I just look at one particular item? And I'm probably going to embarrass Councillor Bartlett on this. We've got something that is showing has been transferred. If I give you DC 0072.
72. Or 072.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that was transferred to the local town council. That item. I don't want to be too vague, but I don't want to end up getting me knuckles wrapped for going into something that should be exempt. I've had the warning.
I can't tell you immediately where
Okay.
where that was transferred.
Please come back to the committee.
Yeah.
Let me just see where the rest of my notes are. I've been through this quite painstakingly. Right. We've got a mention on here of the Woodlands Nature Reserve at Westmoors. It's a recreational site. Do the recreational sites come under the green space team?
They come under countryside.
Yeah. And can you explain to me what is significant land? Because that seems a very broad description. When some of it might be street, a corner, or it could be acres of land.
So my entirely honest response to that is that is a term that needs some further work from us, because it's not very descriptive, and when I looked at some of them that are described as significant large, so that's something we'll be looking to amend going forward.
Yeah, I'm getting into trouble if I raise that one, so I'll leave that for outside the meeting. Yeah, and on some of the items you put forward as that we're to look at, you've got a lot of highways improvements. So what do you believe are the highways improvements that belong in assets and register on the asset register?
So the asset register is a complete register of all assets across.
And the highways are the asset, of course.
Some of those are parcels of land that have been acquired over many years for various highways improvements schemes. So they're not managed by assets and property, but they are recorded on the council's asset register.
That's fine. Usually, it's taken me, the public will know how many items I'm trying to look at. That's it for me. I will, after the meeting, want to take something up with housing, but I don't think it's fair at this moment to do it, because we might have to go into something a bit technical. I'm going to leave that until after the meeting. Councillor Bartlett.
While I read the report, I didn't really do a deep dive into the asset list because it was a bit daunting. But while we've been talking, I've had a quick look at the asset list. I'm just wondering, is it possible to break down the asset list in terms of ward areas? There's a reason why I've asked.
Yes, and you can also do that on Dorset Explorer, but we can provide you with a sub list from a ward area. Absolutely.
Come back. And it's by no means a criticism of the officer, because you've inherited lists from predecessor authorities. And I noticed that there's 3 in my town which factually aren't correct.
Okay.
I think I can comment in the meeting without a problem. It's one refers to the street light outside HSBC Bank, doesn't exist anymore. It's white stuff, and I'm told other fashion outlets are available, but not being anybody who knows me knows I don't do fashion. Station Road, Griffin Hotel was demolished in the 70s or 80s, and the Planet was disposed of by East Yorkshire District Council before LGR. As I say, you've inherited the list from predecessor authorities, but I think it might be beneficial if we could break it down into ward areas to send that out to the ward members who know their areas, and possibly they could work in conjunction with officers and actually update the list to make sure it's factually accurate.
Yep.
I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm going to do it. A lot of work has gone into this, and when we went through LGR, one of the biggest problems we had was knowing what properties we got where. This council's been in existence for 6.5 years, but of course for 2 years we were in the middle of a pandemic, which really tore the guts out of the first stage of this work. And again, I think we need to remind the public every now and again that although we're in our second session, the pandemic played a tremendous part on things that we could and couldn't do. Again, I'm going to say thanks for the work you've done on this, Jess. I know we gave you a little bit of pressure last time. You dealt with that pressure, and well done. But there are a few other items on here that I will get Anthony to write to you on that I need further information on. Members, have we got any more questions? Can we move on? Thank you, Jess. Right. Don't need the break, do we? No, we're not going to have the break. Right. No, it's not tea and cakes either. Item 7 on the agenda. This should take about 3 hours, but we should be able to get through it probably 2.5. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris, who had the pleasure of working with me under the previous administration. So you're going to tell us all about what's happening on EV charging.
Yeah. So with your permission, I've got a few slides just to give you an overview. That is bad. Makes me laugh. It's the cinema, huh? So, by way of a reminder, with regards to electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Dorset, the rollout of electric vehicle charging infrastructure forms a key part of our ongoing commitment to deliver against the council plan priority of responding to the climate and nature crisis, as well as underpinning the delivery of our natural environment, climate and ecology strategy. And transport constitutes around about 1/3 of emissions in Dorset and nationally. And it's a key area of focus for our organisational and systems-led approach to actually tackling climate change and the whole of decarbonisation. What I'm going to quickly do is just run through or give you an overview in terms of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure and where we are nationally. So now electric vehicles account for about 5% of the cars and vans, light vans on the road now. The numbers are growing. Vehicle sales at about 25%, just over 25% of vehicles sold in the last quarter were electric, fully electric. And by 2030, it's predicted by DFT that around about 30% of cars will be electric, with that number rising to about 100% by 2040, given current trends. But also given the things like the ZEV mandate, so that's the zero emission vehicles mandate, which puts the onus on manufacturers to only or prioritise the sale of electric vehicles, but also in 2030 the government is planning on banning the sale of new internal combustion engine vehicles. We're obviously talking about cars and vans, so smaller vehicles. So that is the general trend. That's the way that it's moving, and everything that we're doing in terms of EV infrastructure is in preparation for that future. And just by way of information, the map there that you can see, I would urge you to go online and look at ZapMap if you're interested in understanding where our electric vehicle charge points are across the county. And I would also flag up that those aren't purely Dorset Council sponsored sites. So ZapMap has all the charging infrastructure.
Chris, before you move off that slide, because the public can see this.
Yep. Where's West Dorset?
I'm a little bit concerned as the way we presented that. Because, yeah, it could be 5% now.
Yep.
But I will still be running a diesel car.
Yep.
Probably for the rest of my life.
Okay.
So it won't be 100%. And there's a lot of people that will feel the same way. There are alternative fuels coming through now. And we've just seen the introduction of the East-West hydrogen project, where you're going to have hydrogen vehicles running east-west, and that is going to grow. So I just want to make sure that people understand that where it says 2030 EVs are predicted to be 30% of cars, the information I have at the moment is that if you buy a car today, you're paying a premium price for an EV motor. But when you come to on the second-hand market, it's less than a combustible engine that you would buy. And I think we need to understand that the public still aren't with us on trying to go carbon neutral. Now, I held that portfolio for long enough, and I know how difficult it is to get people to respond. But I think we need to be very careful when we're putting information out that we make sure it's clearly understandable that these are probably our predictions, because they certainly don't fit in with the SMMT predictions.
These are predictions. In fact, this slide probably illustrates it more clearly. So these are predictions from Cenex, who are consultants that have been employed by Department for Transport. These are the figures that the Department of Transport are working to, their predictions. So yeah, I'm not going to pretend that these are you know, these are not my predictions at all.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
and I think we need to get that point across.
Yeah,
because the slide showed that these are predictions, and because we're putting them up with the Dorset Council logo on, people could interpret that as being our predictions. So these are taken from, I use the term loosely, experts.
Yeah.
And they're employed by the DFT. So it's DFT information, which might vary to ours. You happy with that?
Well, yes. I mean, a prediction is always a prediction.
Yeah. Right.
Do
you want to continue with your slide?
Yeah, sure.
Try not to interrupt.
No, that's all right. So the role of local authorities in terms of installing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. The government's taking charge electric vehicle infrastructure strategy, which was published in 2023, made it quite clear what the responsibilities are. I won't read them out, but you can, of relevance to this particular meeting is that we would local authorities are expected to utilise public assets for charge points, and it makes the point of well, it mentions car parks specifically there for hosting EV chargers. So moving on then to the key lines of inquiry. usage and income, it's steadily increasing. You can see there are sharp spikes. The data is not ever so clear there on the right, but so what I've displayed there in the graph is rapid, fast, and ultra rapid chargers. Just by way of explanation, fast chargers are not very well named because they're not fast. They're actually quite slow. They deliver about 7 kilowatts to about 22 kilowatts per hour. Yeah, they're not that fast. They're convenient if you've got a long time to park your vehicle. So overnight charging, if you're at the supermarket for a few hours or whatever, then they can be good. The good thing about them is that they are lower cost than the rapid and ultra rapid chargers. We've got both kinds in Dorset to meet demand, different types of demand from users. But you can see there that there's steady growth in terms of usage over time, with some real peaks over the summer period when we obviously get a lot of visitors. Income to date, total of about £36,000. It's a little more because I haven't included the figures for summer in that, but Dorset Council receive 1.53 pence, so that's roughly 1.5 pence, just for clarity, per kilowatt dispensed. That's from the supplier. Moving on, the other thing that we were asked about was the effect on parking income of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We've given the data that is available to us from our parking colleagues, a really good going through. There is no evidence of any impact on parking income as a result of installing our charging infrastructure. We have about charging infrastructure constitutes just under 2% of our total parking spaces, but we've not been able to find any impact on the charge parking income. I'm not expecting you to read this, but our funding, this is detailed in the report, but our funding, we've managed to acquire, if that's the right word, by the time we deliver our whole programme that's planned in 2030, we think we should have got 19 million capital funding, which is mostly comes from central government, but also the majority is from the private sector. So to date, MER, who are our current charge point operators that have been delivering across the county, they will by 2030 they will have contributed around about £7 million to our charging infrastructure, just based on current plans. But we've also now just recently, we're still at the contract negotiation stage, but we've procured our next phase based on local electric vehicle infrastructure funding. We just procured, or we're in the process of the contract for that, and that will see us close to £11 million of government and private sector funding to deliver on street charging. What I haven't included in this slide is our capability funding, which also comes from central government, which covers off the small team that delivers this program, and by small, 3.2 FTE equivalent. So yeah, really, it's all delivered by not many of us. So the other thing we were asked about was the rollout time. We were fortunate enough to be made a pilot site for the local electric vehicle infrastructure funding that was provided by DFT a few years ago. It's been a really difficult scheme to deliver, and what I've done here is listed a number of the reasons why it's been so difficult. The idea of this is to put charge points in the places that are less commercially attractive, so away from our town centres, but actually in rural locations and places that haven't got EV chargers. And it's been a real challenge because finding sites has been difficult. There's been a lot of legal hurdles, but we are now, gaining momentum on that program and that piece of work. So I'm optimistic that we'll really start to deliver it at scale in the near future. Key performance indicators. There are a number of key performance indicators. Obviously, in the charge point operators' interest to have the network up and running, reliable, and dispensing electricity for drivers as much as possible. We've met our corporate delivery targets that on an annual basis, but we know we need to get better, and we've built a number of new key performance indicators into the new contract. They total 23 that will be delivered. So that's a quick run through. There's some detail in the report. I do need to flag that I spotted an error in the data that went to the committee in one of the columns for 2024. We used the wrong figure for calculating income. It should have been.
Can you tell me which item that's under?
Well, it was in the spreadsheet that was I think shared with committee members. So that would have been on income.
It'll be in the exam.
On the income. So it depends how much detail we looked at the.
Well, I'm not going to go into exempt to find out where that is, but
no,
we'll have a look at it afterwards, shall we?
Well, yes, and I will recirculate a corrected.
Right. Can I ask people who aren't on the committee? We've got a number of people, obviously online. I thought I might see that. Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Andrew Parry, West Parley Ward. At the risk of seeming cynical, I would like to challenge you around I'd like to challenge officers around the statement there that we haven't seen an impact on parking as a result of EV. My observations are that to create a 2-bay EV parking bay, we take 3 bays. Therefore, we are already -1 parking bay. And frequently, when I use Dorset Council car parks, such as the one outside of County Hall, I note that the EV parking bays are in fact the only vacant bays that we have in our car parks. So they don't appear to be getting the usage of other parking bays. Therefore, are we seeing an impact in our revenues there? I'd also have to say that actually, is the government guidelines for us to have electric vehicle charging points a bit like the government guidelines about we have to provide a library service, which is in effect how many do we have to have is determined by us, not by government. Providing there is an offering, we have met the criteria. We haven't, there are 40 million vehicles on Britain's roads, but we don't put a petrol pump in every car park. Therefore, why should we go down the route of doing such things for electric vehicle charging? I also note, of course, that when we embarked upon providing electric vehicle charging at the start of the rollout of electric vehicles on Britain's roads, there were relatively few charging points, and local government was seen as a provider of it in our facilities. However, I note now there are far more charging points in car parks and fueling stations that are not owned by local authorities, and therefore are we actually funding something that the private sector is now investing in, and therefore there is no requirement for us or necessity for us to invest in the way we have previously.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Who'd like to answer?
A lot of questions there. So taking your last point, the money is there from central government to be taken. Electric vehicle charging is different to, and I take your point about, we don't have any fuel stations in our car parks. It's not something local authorities do, but electric vehicle charging is different. And we shouldn't be trying to. It's a completely different model. If we do not provide these and take advantage of all the government funding and private sector funding that is available, then our drivers will be left short. Where this is all about giving people choice and the option to switch to electric vehicles. Over which they, in not many years' time, just over 4 years' time, they won't have a choice. But if they want to go and buy a new vehicle, they won't have a choice but to buy an electric vehicle.
Or one with an alternative fuel.
Ray.
Yeah, and we've looked to see as well whether there has been an impact on income. Car park spaces don't exist in isolation, so I think what we would typically see is if a car park is full, then a driver will drive to the next car park to find a space or park on the street. But if they're driving to another council car park, if that's their choice, then that income won't be lost. And I think that's what we're seeing. We looked at the data in every which way we could to see if, when we put those car park those charges in car parks, whether it did have any effect on the income of that car park. And we actually we couldn't find it. We couldn't see a loss of of parking episodes, because that's what we record. So yeah, I've looked to my my colleague in Mike Westwood.
Yes, please, Mike.
I think. Oh, sorry, Michael Westwood, Parking Service Manager. I think you make a valid point about particularly College Park. It's obviously a bit of a shop front, if you like, because it's right in front of County Hall there. But it is a very different car park to many of our other car parks, and performs in a very different way. A good example of that is normally, most of our car parks have a peak time around about lunchtime, and we'll see most of our ticket sales. In Colleton Park, it's around about 8 o'clock in the morning, massively so, where we'll see most of the ticket sales. So it does fill up quickly and early because of where it is, as you'd have thought. So a lot of staff use it, a lot of permit holders use it. And again, that one does get busy, particularly sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's quiet on a Friday, quiet on a Saturday, quiet on a Sunday, quiet on a Monday, but that middle of the week, And we'd imagine when more staff are in it, it's busier. So we're definitely seeing from the data a pattern of staff using that car park, so it will be full. But Chris does make a good point. When we look across an area, and if we look across Dorchester, there's very few hours in a year when our car parks are at capacity. We're just doing some work at the moment with the data to work out what that looks like. So yes, what we'd expect people to do is if they did turn up at Coventry might be a good example, and can't park there, we know that they will then go on to somewhere like Top of Town car park and park there. So we're not losing that income. From a transaction point of view, we've seen this year, obviously, as you'd have thought, so we've had a really good summer with transactions, so they've been naturally high. But in the car parks where we've had some delays around fitting EV chargers, we've not seen a big loss in transactions or a loss in money, even though we've seen perhaps spaces stand empty for longer than we'd have liked because of one problem or another. So yeah, it's important not to look at car parks individually and to look at them as area based. Because yeah, certainly when people are coming to a destination, they're looking to park somewhere. Yeah, they perhaps would have liked to have parked in their car park of choice, but they've still got to do whatever business it is that they're turning out for. So they're still going to park somewhere, and we're in the lucky position in Dorset that we manage and own the majority of car parks in most towns, so we're not losing that money elsewhere.
Okay, Chairman, may I come back a couple of supplementaries, please?
Sure.
If you indulge me. The first one is, and as you know, I, along with you, Chair, have expressed an interest in alternative fuels, and in particular, of course, hydrogen. I'm aware, of course, there are production cars available in the UK that will operate on hydrogen fuel. Okay, they have a range of about 350 miles, as I understand it, on a tank full. But the closest recharging point that we currently have in Dorset, I believe, is at Cobham on the M25, some 100 miles away. Instead of investing additional funds and resources into additional EV charging, should we look at creating a dedicated hydrogen charging point somewhere along the Dorset transport network, east to west, because that would strike me as an appropriate refueling point and may be, of course, a source of additional revenue to us. That's my first point. My second point is one around consumer protection for people using EV charging points. As I understand it, the ability to run EV vehicles at the lowest possible recharging costs hinges on the capacity to be able to do things such as charge your vehicle at home overnight. It's quite my only time I have been called into using a public charging point, I was quite surprised to receive a bill of over £30 for a daytime charging, which gave me a range of over 100 miles, about 100 miles. I thought that was quite a high price to pay using one of our public facilities. Are our consumers and residents, are they adequately aware of the charges that they are going to incur using EV charging points in Dorset Council car parks, or do we require better information to be made available to them?
So I can take that. The cost to charge is higher for public charging. There are a number of reasons for that. Obviously, the amount of investment that there needs to be a return on that for the companies that are offering it. There's also 20% VAT levied on the cost to charge versus the 5% that you would pay if you charge at home. It is expensive. I agree, but all the charging information, the cost to charge, is publicly available either through, through the suppliers' apps, but also on public websites like ZapMap that I referred to earlier. So it's not a secret, and yes, there is you know, we could publicise that more, but it's that is the cost of public charging, and the cost of charging Dorset is as near as damn it the same cost as everywhere, as the national average.
Chairman, if you may indulge me, sorry. Typically, what would a EV charging premium be in a Dorset Council car park compared to, say, average tariff for somebody charging overnight at home? To what extent are our customers being charged a premium? Is it a fair premium, or are they being ripped off?
So the cost of charging at home, if you're on a low tariff, so something that might be offered by a company, let's say Octopus, you'll be paying 7 pence per kilowatt overnight, roughly. So that equates to about 2.5 pence per mile, roughly. So then our fast chargers are currently 55 pence per kilowatt. The new charge point operator that we're about to appoint will be offering 42 pence per kilowatt, but overnight they'll be available for 37 pence per kilowatt. According to the ZapMap price index, the average cost to charge at a fast charger is 51 pence per kilowatt nationally. So our chargers are 4 pence higher. That ZapMap index has been falling in the last 2 or 3 months, and MERS price hasn't caught up with it. If you charge at a rapid charger, so that's a much faster charging experience, you pay for that convenience, and MER charge 76 pence per kilowatt, which is bang on the nail of the national ZapMap price index. So I agree, it's expensive. Just by way of comparison, the sort of cut-off point that people talk about is roughly about 43 pence per kilowatt to meet an equivalent price of filling up a car with petrol or diesel. Obviously, all these prices are prone to fluctuation. So that's the comparison point if you're looking to compare with petrol and diesel. But I agree, it would be fantastic if we could charge a lot less. But we don't control the pricing. That's down to our concessionaire, the charge point operator.
Chair, I don't know how your committee feel about it, but I am deeply concerned on what I've heard there, that Dorset residents, or residents and visitors, I should say, users of EV charging points, simply have not got enough information at the point at which they're engaging the use of the EV charge points to understand the tariffs they are facing. They are paying 25% more, by the sounds of things, in comparison to a petrol charging comparison, or considerably more than they would pay overnight. If I drive around Dorchester or anywhere else, but there are 3 filling stations in Dorchester, all of them, before I even enter the forecourt, have to, by law, publish the cost of a litre of unleaded or a litre of diesel fuel in bold letters, bold numbers, so that we can see, as a consumer, what they are going to charge. I think we should be doing something very similar in our car parks for our EV chargers.
Can I just pick up on that? Because thank you for raising that point, Andrew, because it is something that is quite valid. You know, I don't go into a petrol station unless I know what I'm going to pay per litre. And believe me, there is a massive variance. And I will go wherever locally I get a better price. We don't state on our machines how much they're going to charge per kilowatt, do we? So that can become a surprise
Not on
to
the
the
physical
users.
machines, no. But as an EV driver myself, I go on an app I see where the charge points are, I make a choice about which one I would choose to use based on the price that's clearly shown on the app.
But the question is, why are we not stating how much it costs? It's a very simple procedure. And I do think, I mean, it would appear to me that you pay 20% extra for the car. When you come to part exchange, you get 20% less than the equivalent car as a combustible engine. That's fact. And during that period, you pay a premium price for the fuel. Now, if you're going to pay £30 to do 100 miles, which is what Councillor Parry was saying, then that's far more than I pay for a combustible engine. And I think something has to happen. And I've said right from the word go, technology will take over. What we've got to do is give it the breathing space. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're not seeing the returns that we expected to see. Because if I go back to the early stages of this, and I was a party to it, so I've got to put my hand up. I thought that it would generate a lot more cash than it currently is. So I've got to be careful because I don't want to be told I've got to go into as exempt. But it's something I'm going to ask you to look at on one of the proposals. Hopefully you're keeping note of all these. That we do need to consider putting notices on the machines which says for a charging, you will get charged this amount. I think that's only fair on the residents. Would that make you happy, Councillor Parry?
I think so. Yes, I think we need to look at a bit of consumer protection around pricing there, because I think it would be an unpleasant shock and a negative position for this council to be in if we found ourselves or found users of our facilities incurring much greater, considerably greater and poor value from the services we provide.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee.
Yeah. Now I can see. Excuse me 1 second. Can I just?
Yeah. Sharing is
Sharing. Councillor Jesperson, let me bring you in.
Councillor Sherry, oh, you can't really, can you see me all right? Councillor Sherry Jesperson, the Hillfoots and Upper Tarrants Ward. I'd like to, if I may, follow on from the point that Councillor Parry has just made, because I absolutely share his concerns. Isn't it really the case that for the vast majority of ordinary residents in Dorset, on the kind of salaries that the average salary of people in Dorset, that there's really no possibility of affording an electric vehicle unless you can charge at home? To buy an electric vehicle when there's no possibility of charging it at home from your own electricity supply, as you were saying, at the 2 pence per kilowatt, it's completely out of the question and will remain out and will still be completely out of the question for many, many people by 2030. We have to start focusing on the things that Dorset Council needs to do to make charging at home available to more people. And many, many people across Dorset, especially in our town centres and in our villages, live in conservation areas. They live in areas where what they can do in their front gardens is restricted. And it's my own position. I live in a listed building and I wouldn't be allowed to put a charging point in my front garden, which is ludicrous because I won't be able to buy an electric vehicle until I'm allowed to put a charging point, allowed to park my car in my front garden and charge it. So there are things, but restrictions that we are putting on people that we have to examine as Dorset Council about conservation areas and about how we allow people to use their front gardens, how we allow people to access their own parking space in the roadside in order to make home charging more possible. Until we do that, I think we are. I think it's ambitious, and an ambition that I absolutely support. But I think it's unrealistic to think that we're going to get to 100% or anything like 100% electric vehicle ownership by 2040 and 2030, unless people can charge at home. It's just not possible to say to people on the kind of average Dorset Council wage that you have to pay all that extra money for an electric vehicle and then you have to go out and charge it. And it has to be on the super fast charge because you can't sit in Tesco's car park all night. I think it's an unrealistic ask, and I think we are in danger of building an ambition and a plan that is simply not possible to achieve until we sort out letting more people charge their vehicles at home. And I have raised this point several times, and I'm not seeing any progress. I'm not seeing any discussion of that and how we can make that easier for people. Thank you.
Okay, most of that is a confirmation of what Councillor Parry was telling us. So with your permission, Sherry, I'm going to move on to Councillor Gibson, who sat at the side of me, my chauffeur for the night. Come to members in a minute.
How do you know, is it? No, thank you, Chairman. I don't know if I'm in danger of being sort of unduly positive for a change because I've got a holiday coming up, but actually, I would class myself as pro electric vehicles. Don't have one. But I recognise the trend that Chris sets. I don't think we should get hung up on whether it's 100% or 90% or 80%. Let's say it's even only 50%. That's 10 times what we've currently got, and the infrastructure needs to hit that. Sherry's absolutely right. You know, if you don't have a sea change in the planning regulations that allows for genuine scaling up of at-home charging, it's going to be difficult to get to even that number, I suspect. But that's not really, I suspect, what the paper's due to look at. It's the rollout of electric vehicles, how we're spending the money that we've secured from the private sector and from the government, which I agree we need to take advantage of. But a couple of sort of observations that I've got. I mean, firstly, the rollout in the grand scheme of things is still relatively small because it's a new scheme. Looking on the Dorset Explorer map, it is concentrated in our tourist areas, and I'll come back to that point because I think there's relevance there. But when I clicked on the tab on Dorset Explorer that says, you know, the future programme sites, and there's nothing sort of east of Blandford there. So it's just my usual play on whatever the topic of the day is. It's just the eastern side of the county really doesn't always get quite the attention that the Dorchester-Weymouth corridor does get. I'm slightly less. I see, Craig, you've got a new one coming to Bayminster. But there's one of the points I do want to make though is again, I think we ought not to get fixated too much on the who's using those charges when they could use it for cheaper at home. When I was speaking to my economic growth colleagues back when I had that portfolio, actually a lot of those charges I suspect being used by people that don't live as locally as you might expect in those car parks. It's people coming into town centres, it's people visiting from abroad. Dorset Council relies on tourism. And actually, I think we're missing a trick if we don't put enough charges in those spaces. If the projections are right and we get to even 50% of car use as EV, there's going to be an unbelievable scramble for EV charging infrastructure. And if you're a tourist area that doesn't have it, you'll struggle. So for me, my focus has always been on making sure there's enough of them to be market led. Just to make a needless political point here, I'm a conservative. I believe in the free market. I dislike the imposition that I still don't believe will happen when it comes to it of the end of the combustion engine. I think that's coming far too soon. The infrastructure we're talking about here is not going to be in place anyway. So I think that date will almost certainly get pushed back. But there will come a day where people choose EVs. If I had the money, I would choose an EV. And if I have that EV, I want to go to places that I don't know, not where I live, and know that I can charge it. I think Andrew Parry makes a brilliant point about consumer awareness. I think that's a really good point. I think that's a lobbying point personally to the government, as it happens. But from just speaking purely from my old experience in the economic growth team, this is really important for that. So my only plea is to make sure that it's not just tourist-based economic growth, it's in all of our town centres, and the east looks a little bit light.
We are desperately trying to get them all over the county. That is, we've got the money, we've got the funding. The challenge for us is finding the sites, especially in those smaller villages, and where it's difficult to find somewhere you could safely site one.
Through you, Chairman, could I ask what would you like to see happen? What do you think would unlock more sites?
I think honestly, it is really just boils down to looking and looking. From our point of view, just actually beavering away and finding those locations. There's a bit of resistance from some, let's say, prime sites that, for example, village halls would be great, but there's a little bit of reluctance for them to host EV charge points from some of them. Some of them have been very enthusiastic. Just soon be going live with charge point in rapid and a fast charger at Wool Village Hall, which is great for the village. So some of those larger villages can really benefit from that's on their land, so they get the payback from it. One thing that we haven't covered, but it's worth remembering that this is a concession contract, and at the end of that contract, which is 15 years, but all this charging infrastructure will transfer to Dorset Council. So whatever revenues generated from those charge points will, if Dorset Council chose to be the operator, would come to Dorset Council. And that could be quite significant in terms of income.
Okay. Right, I'm expecting sorry.
Can I just ask the officer, I'm not clarifying on this. So at that end of that 15-year period, we take the revenue, all the revenue from the electricity charging station that we put in.
So yes, the assets will transfer to Dorset Council, right? Or we have the option, obviously, for them to be made good. We can take them all out at the charge point operator's expense. But
so my question is then, so at that point, we can then charge what we want for the electricity that we provide.
Yeah, we could do what we want.
Okay, so we could make it cheaper.
Yeah, the only point I would raise, John, is that those machines will be outdated and probably won't be charging at the rate you actually need. So it's going to be something that it's a nice decision for the councils of the future. Right, I'm going to take some questions. I've got a number of questions to ask myself. Who'd like to go first?
I'd like to go first.
Go on.
May, Chairman. Well, I did put my hand up first.
I was smart.
I was dressed for a meeting. If I had, I was going to put money on, you mentioned hydrogen as well. But in 2021, 1.7% of all cars in this country were electric. Now in 2025, it's 4.78. That's a 3% increase, most of which is driven by fleet sales, because private sales of electric cars are on the decline. It's the public sector obsession with net zero that's pushing electric car sales, not private usage. That is massively declining in Europe and the United States. So it's not going to be residential usage. It is going to be largely from fleet vehicles at the minute, and we're nowhere near going to hit the 2040 target of 100%. If we hit that target, I'll tell you what, I'll come to meetings in a t-shirt for the rest of my political career, even if it's 4 years. It just isn't going to happen. It's a Mickey Mouse target to chase. I know it's not us. It is a mandate from central government. It's a ridiculous mandate, and it just isn't going to work. And what concerns me is as someone who comes from a working class background, it's a very middle class obsession. People in my neighbourhood who don't have a driveway, who park on the street, where Councillor Verma lives in Westham, Councillor Aldward in Melcombe Regis, where you've got a hell of a job to park a diesel car or a petrol car, let alone an electric car. I don't understand where they're going to charge their cars. You can't expect people to then go into a car park their car there, charge it, carry all their shopping miles and miles, well, not miles, but a long way back to their home. I just don't think it's realistic in any which way whatsoever. And I think it's a really dangerous thing to chase, because we could end up spending a lot of money on it for no one to use it. The other thing as well is we in Weymouth, and then, sorry to use that word to you fellas, Weymouth. But we in Weymouth obviously make a lot of money for the council from car parking revenue. This is, if everybody's going to go electric, we're going to have a massively reduced car parking spaces because they're going to be taken up by electric points. So when people are visiting to Weymouth, where are they meant to park? Because even if they park at the park and ride, there's still going to be less spaces because we've got more electric points. So are we then going to have decreased visitor numbers? Are they going to be on rotas? I just don't think there is a world in which the current proposals are going to work. Councillor Gibbs started this by saying you could be really positive for going on holiday. Someone who hates going on holiday, I'm going to be really negative. And I think that in actual fact, I think we're doing far too much on this when actually it's going to affect a very small number of people. Say 4% of the people in this county are electric car owners. 95% of them in that case are not. And at the end of the day, we spend an awful lot of time talking about electric car usages and all things like that. If you put one in, I share a village hall or community centre in my ward, I guarantee you none of my people that use that can afford electric car, and I won't be able to soon whatsoever. So my 2 pennies worth.
Thank you.
I might try maybe be a little bit more positive. This is the different scenarios and the conversations we're having. I can resonate with all of them because I've owned an EV. I've been able to charge at home. I then didn't have a home charger for a while because I moved. And now I can't really afford to have an EV and gone back to petrol because I'm not doing the same sort of mileage. So I can kind of sympathise and understand the intricacies. There's a few sort of questions I was going to ask, and it's more, it may be my kind of lack of understanding of how we actually put the infrastructure in. But one of the big challenges, or the other things, I live in a rural market town where everything's listed and it's really difficult to put the infrastructure in. So the first kind of question I was going to ask is, in terms of the process of trying to find those sites, have we put much thought into kind of an alternative thinking? So I use, for an example, the Yarn Barton car park in Bedminster. So currently there's 2 chargers, kind of semi-rapid chargers, which are great. But if we were to look at like smaller chargers, and my basic knowledge of how the kind of infrastructure works, if we had smaller chargers, there could be more scope to fit more charging points, because that kind of car park is completely different to a Weymouth car park. Because what I mean by that is because it's a market town in a particular part of the town where more cars are on street parking. If we had 10 7-kilowatt chargers, actually more local residents would use those kind of chargers overnight and potentially benefit from cheaper tariffs. So I just wonder if we get to a point, certainly in the kind of rural West Dorset or East Dorset, where we can't find the sites where you need the bigger chargers with the big green box next to it, what scope or what thoughts gone into kind of like a smaller, longer charging? Everybody talks about rapid charging. One of the reasons it's 7 pence a kilowatt a night is because it takes all night to charge. Yeah. And I just wonder if there's kind of sort of slightly different thinking with that. The other thing I was just going to ask is, in terms of how we think about spending money on charging points, and forgive me, I can't remember which council asked a question previously about sort of being able to charge at home, but there used to be, and I benefited from it the first time round, government schemes where you could get some support to have home chargers fitted. And again, I just wonder if we get to a kind of almost saturation point where we just can't find enough space to put chargers within Dorset, whether or not we might consider something similar. So Councillor Jesperson can have her charger in her grade 2. Well, I just wonder, I wonder whether it's outside the box. It's like, because on Zapcharge or these other platforms, there are platforms where homeowners can make their chargers available to members of the public to charge. So if we can't find enough DC car parks, perhaps we can support residents who would want to charge at home and be part of that network. So it's kind of 2 questions. I'd be interested to know them.
Yeah, it's an interest in that one. Sorry, John Andrews, cabinet member for Place Services. Because the leader is on that network, so people go in his house and charge off of his charger.
We go in there.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll cost you, but he doesn't charge. He only charges what it costs. But there's a lot of people do that.
Right, we need to respond to a question from Councillor O'Leary. Because I jumped across, and he raised the question as to where people are going to park if all of a sudden we start to increase the amount of charging points. Because when I get my turn, I'm going to query the information you've given us, because I just can't get that in my head that we take 3 spaces for 2 charging points. We get the revenue of those charging points, so that has to be a reduction in the parking revenue. That is so logical. And if you can answer Councillor Leary first.
Sorry, that, and also if you live in a built-up area, and there is, that's the other thing. I don't know where you're going to. And we are chasing a 100% target.
So to date, with our relatively, we've relied on private sector funding. So to date, we have our strategy has been to put charge points in car parks because it's easy. It's easy, and people go to them. They're ours. They're centrally located, so they suit a certain market. That we think we're getting near to a point where, certainly for the vehicles, the number of vehicles that are there now, we're getting close to the point where we've got enough charge points in our car parks, and they suit some people, but they don't suit all. Around about a third of households in Dorset don't have access to off-street parking, so that is a major problem, and that's a problem that's been recognised by government, DFT, and so this next round of funding that they've given all councils is all about helping to provide on-street charging for households who don't have access to off-street parking. So that will be the focus of the next phase, is delivering that on-street charging. Now, there's a lot of houses in Dorset's a big area. The funding that we've got, it will put 1,125 charge point units on our streets. So that is what is coming next. But also what we're looking at, and along with many other local authorities, is cross pavement charging. So this is for people who are want to put a charger, they want to charge from outside their house, and we're looking at how we can provide that facility safely, cheaply, conveniently for residents. So it's not all there yet. It's in development, and it's going to be happening over the next few years. But all of these things are in train. There is a strategy. There is a plan for it.
One more, and I promise I'll pack it in. Go on. And I'm a bit annoyed the cabinet member for climate, whatever it's called, the leader, isn't it? Mr. Andrew Carr. I'm going to ask a bit of a naughty question. Do you genuinely think that by 2040 we will operate as a county with 100% or near 100% fully electric vehicles and be able to actually do that? That society, frankly, collapsing, because I just don't see us all driving around electric cars, having enough places to park, being able to go about our daily lives. There might even be one for the cabinet member, actually, because it's probably more of a political question, because we're chasing a number here that I don't think any of us in here seriously think is even achievable. It's just been set by government. Probably, I think it was even probably our stupid government.
Go on. Before we can go any further, can I just bring some clarity into this? Because the 2040 date is for Dorset Council to be carbon zero. The national position is 2050, which means that then we'd all be questioned. But I'm absolutely convinced there will be some changes made, especially by the announcement by the Prime Minister this afternoon when he was in a press release releasing with the President of the United States, when he said quite clearly that we will still be using oil and gas in the tens of years to come, which tells me that we've realised that we're still going to need oil, we're still going to need gas. Sorry, Belinda, but these are the things that we have to face. But the one point I will pick up on what you've said, and it does affect the market towns, because the market towns have tremendous restrictions on parking, and Councillor Bartlett allowed me to walk around his area some years ago when he was explaining that people haven't got anywhere to park. And this is the problem with the market towns. And you've mentioned bringing cables across the pavements. Well, they would have to be submerged because health and safety won't allow us to drape cables over the top. And the problem is that that person then will have to have a restricted parking space for him to park his car there. And I think that's got a long way to go. That worries me tremendously. We have few parking spaces. We're not going to get into this too far because it's unfair on you, Chris.
Yeah.
And Chris, you and I have worked together long enough. I absolutely respect the job you're doing, and I do. That doesn't mean we can't challenge it, because that's what we're here for. Has any other member got any questions before? Hang on. No.
Well, I was waiting for the answers for my questions.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, Councillor Monks is before me.
What the questions were now?
I can't remember. No, I said about. I'll summarise them quickly. It was kind of slower charges that tend to be easier to fit for market towns for residents overnight parking. And what's the second question? And possible funding for subsidising and supporting home charging. I know John's not comfortable with that, but come on, John.
I ain't got the budget now, let alone it.
That was the two.
So in answer to the smaller charges, they're the ones that we are now, for our next phase with the company that we're in negotiation with. They have a compact, much more compact than what we're currently using as fast chargers. Compact 7 kilowatt charger. It's about the same size as a bollard.
So I think at Birmingham LEC, they put them in their car parks. They're on bollards.
Yeah.
Literally every single parking space had one, and it doesn't take up the extra space or just one.
Yeah. So we've specifically, we liked these ones when we were procuring it. It was one of the things that we specified is that it needs to be minimal impact, bearing in mind the sort of historic nature of a lot of the streets where these would be going. So those are going in. And insofar as the subsidy for people who do want to charge from home, so the subsidies at the moment, I think you alluded to, people used to get £350 grant from DFT. They wanted to install one. DFT have dropped that grant. You can still get it for if you live in a house without off-street parking and you're installing a charge point for, you can use cable gully. That we are also being offered over £100,000 as an authority, which is funding that we could offer as a grant to residents for cross pavement charging as and when we go down that route and we're ready. So that money's there available for us to grab it. That'll only tip of the iceberg really in terms of the number of people that would potentially serve. But yes, so there's money out there, but we haven't worked out yet how it's going to be utilised.
Alex?
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on a few points, and if you wish to answer them as we go, absolutely do, please. So just alluding to that, the data point that people have raised, I think what would have been useful on that would have been to give the Dorset numbers on that. I appreciate the national statistics on that. Is that Dorset 5% of cars? are currently EV, or is that,
Yeah.
or is that
It-
national data?
Yes, and it varies in terms of different areas of Dorset. So I believe there's a higher level of ownership in Wimborne, for example. I think it depends where.
When we talk about the 2 spaces versus 3 spaces that have been brought up, it's entirely possible there to upcharge to make up that deficit on those 2 spaces versus 3 spaces if we wanted to, or does MERS set that price and we can't touch it until the 15 years? Is that correct?
So that, yeah, the three spaces. So this is because we choose as an authority to comply with what are known as the PAS 1899 guidelines, which were worked up by, really for accessibility. So we make them extra wide so that people who've got difficulties, they're effectively like a disabled parking bay. So they're extra wide so that people can access.
But if people were concerned about the loss of revenue, which rightly could happen if it was just, it's 100% whatever.
Yeah, we could make them.
You can make up that
you would restrict
in terms of revenue, though.
In
15 years time.
In
what we charge on those units. So, for example, if Councillor O'Leary's talk, I'll use your example if I may. If there's 90 spaces and we're down to we take it down to 60 spaces, I'm thinking in terms of revenue, we'd be able to make that up in the charges that we choose to set at those charging points.
Yes.
To make up for the loss of 30 spaces.
Shall I come in? Yeah. So Jack Wiltshire, Corporate Director for Highways and Engineering. It's part of an overall parking strategy, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about what our parking strategy would be within 15 years' time. I think the point that Chris is beginning to make was that although we've got accessible spaces at the moment, that is our decision. So if we were going to up the number of units, we could actually have those in smaller spaces, not make a difference. But I think the question of would you charge 1.5 times the parking fee for a wider bay, that would have to be part of future parking strategies.
I kind of almost wanted to give you that opportunity to say that because I feel like there was a lot of heaviness around that demarcation between the 2 and the 3 spaces. So I just want to be clear on that is within our gift if that happens in future and with infrastructure choices. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Councillor Gibson. I really do appreciate that nod to the tourist element of it and being kind of EV trap for Europe. If you have an EV car, and we've talked about the increased income you might have due to that, this is a place where you want to come and visit and you want to spend your money and let's hope big money into our local economy. So I take that point. Thank you. And then there was the discussion around 2040 and Councillor O'Leary, very much similar to my ward, terrace houses. You've got cables on the pavement, so but I don't take any of that. I think 2040 is pie in the sky, with respect, Chair, because we're probably going to have everybody's going to be wireless charging. There's going to be no such thing as a plug in 2040, and that includes on cars. So I think for us to hypothesise about the issues and problems that we'll have it with 100% or 50% isn't where we're at. I think the issues that this report raises, or at least is addressing, is the issue that we've got now, isn't it? We have spent a lot of time looking at the future, but I know it's hard to do that. We are a council, so we tend to spend a lot of time talking about stuff that I thought was not before us. In terms of the spend, I see that we've got 36,000K in income. What is the actual spend outside of the funding that we've got from private, levy, and government to get that 36,000 at the moment? Do we have a number? I looked at the sheet, but I'm not smart enough or wise enough just yet, Chair, on this committee to be able to look at that and say, do you know what? It cost us that much to get that much.
It cost us nothing to get that much.
Okay, I like it. Thank you for the quick answer. And the last one, I take your attention to 5.1, please, Chair, which is, so that last sentence, it says Dorset Council ranks in the top 25% for total charging numbers, but falls to the lower 25% for charges per 100. Is that it falls to the lowest 25%, does it? Or is that, I didn't know what lower quite meant. Is that the one below or the, yeah?
Yeah, we're in the bottom.
Great, not great.
The bottom 20% when it comes to per 100,000.
So here's my question. What's our metric for knowing when enough is enough? When is it that Councillor Monks talks about saturation points, that we know that we've got enough in our county to satisfy the demand? And when do we close that gap? Because ultimately you want to be in the middle, don't you? You want to be in that 50% where you've got just enough for just who wants it. But we're sort of like this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know what's our strategy to readdress that balance?
So that data, that information is available from Cenex, who I mentioned, and DFT, and they do a lot on gap analysis. And our recent bid for the local electric vehicle infrastructure funding was all based on closing that gap. But it's one of those ones where we will close the gap through our next phase. But there will be continuing demand, and so the strategy will be to design against demand, build against demand, and in response to that. So if those vehicles don't materialise, those electric vehicles, then we won't be. I would suggest we wouldn't install them. We're not, and we will reach a point. I suspect there won't be any more money coming from central government. So we'll be reliant on the private sector. The private sector is only going to. They're only going to invest if they see that there is the likelihood of a return on investment.
And lastly, Chair, just in also just clarification with my let's say my combustion colleagues,
which
is the price that we set our residents. We don't set our residents. That's MER that sets that price.
Yeah.
And in terms of that communication that members talked about in relation to knowing how much that is when they go to that point of charge. My understanding is that if you've got an electric car, you unequivocally use an app to find out where you're charging,
exactly.
And that app will always tell you the prices on offer.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, because there was a little not a disagreement with respect, Chair, but just some clarification there I needed, that if you're a resident and you want to find out how much it costs to charge, you're going to know because you're going to be using that app.
Yeah, the government have mandated that for rapid chargers, that price has to be clearly displayed on that rapid charger for all new chargers being installed, and that will be the case. They have a screen and you can see how much it is to charge.
Yeah.
Fast chargers are different. They don't necessarily have the screen, but the only way you can use them is either through a RFID card, fob that you've already pre-purchased from or got from the charge point operator. But most people will use a phone app, and it's there in front of you. There's no way that you wouldn't know before you're charging what the cost is per kilowatt to charge, and exactly how, if they're going to take 30 quid in advance or however it, there are different ways, different charging models. So to EV drivers, it's not invisible. But if you were walking past one and feeling curious about, I wonder how much it is to charge there, you'd need to go on ZapMap, and it's all on there. It's all publicly available. It's available on multiple platforms. But
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, team. Thank you.
Can I just raise one question to what you just said? Because I don't see anything that proves the data that everybody uses the app. I know several people who are running electric cars, and if I said to them, what app are you using? I guarantee I would get, well, I just go and charge. they're not. They just go to the nearest charge point, and that doesn't mean they've referred to an app. So I think we've got to be very careful that we don't mislead people. Let me finish, Chris. By saying we have this data, because we don't. You couldn't get that data. You can't tell whether a driver has been on an app to be pointed to the cheapest point of charge. Because if they did, then our chargers wouldn't get used very much. Is that not correct? Because I look at the charging rates of some of the supermarkets, very much cheaper than ours. The coffee companies, Costa and of course there's other coffee suppliers before I get into trouble. They are cheaper than ours.
Yeah.
So if people are using the app, why aren't they going to the supermarkets? Why aren't they going to the other places? So I'm not convinced by what you've said, that we have the data that says everybody uses the app.
So in order to use our fast chargers, the only way really is to use an app, the MER app, in order to access and pay for that charge.
So what you're saying, if you don't have a smartphone with the app on, and a lot of the older generation, I'm one of them. I do have a smartphone, by the way. It's that is. Just bought a new one. But
so you can use them. You can.
But can I not go to a fast charger and just pay by credit card?
You can go to a rapid charger.
Yeah.
And you can, yes, they're all pay. You can use your card. You can use your phone. You can pay however.
So going back to one of the recommendations we're going to be making, we need to put some pricing on the chargers, because I think it's only fair that people don't get a surprise.
So those prices are displayed on those rapid chargers, and those are the ones that
we don't have many of those.
We've got a lot.
How many? How many out of the 104?
Probably, I think, roughly about 30, 40. Don't know exact number.
Chris, can you go back and clarify that number for me and come back to the committee? Because I think it's important that we understand, and I think Councillor Parry raised a very valid point, that the customer, our residents that we're supposed to be looking after, need to know what they're paying for. And again, I really do have a concern over thinking that people go onto an app to find out where the cheapest one is. Because I'm not sure that that is happening if they're using so many of ours. Don't answer it. We can come back to it. I'm going to bring in Councillor Bartlett. No, it doesn't matter. I'm bending the rules. Councillor Bartlett. I worked with him when he was Scrutiny Chairman. Don't raise a point of order.
No, I just want to come in though.
In a minute.
I can defer
to
Councillor.
No, on to you.
Very interesting debate. I think your point, Chairman, we're at a juncture here where technology is moving so rapidly and things are changing. And as a scrutiny committee, you're looking at a report as to whether we're still going to continue investing within EV chargers. That industry itself is changing. When electric vehicles come out, I didn't understand why they didn't come out with dynamos in the first place. They were charging when you were driving them. Now, as far as I'm aware, that industry is moving down that direction with the hybrids and with electric vehicles that they're charging as you're driving them. My daughter's partner, fiance, has an electric car which charges itself as he's driving it. Even though I understand that even when you're braking it, it's charging itself. So that technology is moving rapidly. And I agree with a lot of what Councillor Leary has said around the future provision of cars within Dorset, or nationally even, or globally even. I'm of a view that I think hydrogen will take over eventually. I think that technology is proven. I was in short trousers when I think I saw the first hydrogen engine on Tomorrow's World, which produced a glass of water. Unfortunately, petrochemical companies, I think, brought patents up, and so that was stalled, that particular avenue of technology. I think we could have had it decades ago. I think with the way technology is moving, we'll probably end up with cars, and the government won't like it. I don't know how they're going to stop it, but I dare say they will try and stop it, where cars will produce their own hydrogen when you're driving them. If we could put a man on the moon in the 1960s, conspiracy theorists, of course, and they had to produce an oxygen when they were traveling there. It's 250,000 miles away. It was stuck out in space. So technology moves rapidly. So what I would hope would be that this committee, you've got a forward work program we're going to look at in a minute. When I sat where you were, Chairman, looked at risk, this council, you know, if it's going to invest this money in this, where is the future going? And I've suggested what this committee needs is a paper to come to it, giving where the industry is now with hydrogen production, what the future looks like around that, whether hydrogen cars are going to be coming in, at what point they're going to be coming in, what those cells are forecast to be like, because I think that's the direction it will move. And if we're going to invest a lot of money in EV charging points and the associated issues that can create, particularly around our car parks and our charging and what have you, I think this council needs to have an understanding of the future.
Yep, thank you for those comments. Take them on board. And I will add that I know of at least 3 of the bigger car manufacturers who have announced hydrogen cars to be in production by 2026. And unfortunately, we're still waiting for the government to okay hydrogen to be coming down the gas pipes. Although in my own area, we're seeing the whole refurbishment of the gas pipework network, causing absolute agonies on the road closures. But we are where we are. But hydrogen has always been a bit of a passion for me. You're aware, and
is it?
If it doesn't mention it, Louis will keep telling you. Because I said at the first EAP meeting on climate change that technology will take over.
Yes.
And I still stand by that. We've still got a long way to go. You mentioned about a car producing its own hydrogen. Of course it can. You need a little electrolyzer and some bottles of water, and that produces the hydrogen. And there are people seeking patents on that at the moment. I've been working with one of them, and if those patents go through, yeah, time will change again, where you won't have to go anywhere other than fill up with water. So, Louis, you want to come in?
Yeah, it comes to something quite fundamental. At the first Order Council meeting, I was one of 2 people in the last remaining councillor that voted against the climate emergency, partly because I don't think it is an achievable target of 2050. It's now 2040. A large base of that is around a move of people going from diesel and petrol cars into electric. Speaking here today, it seems that nobody, officer, cabinet member or elected member, seem to realistically think that diesel and petrol cars are going to be off the roads by 2040, which to me then puts the entire climate agenda that this council has been frankly quite obsessive about for a long period of time out the window. It just isn't going to be a meetable target. And to me, I think that then has to go on the recommendation is 2040 an achievable target for net zero? Personally, based on this, if car usage is one of the highest causes of carbon in this county, if we cannot eliminate that, I remember the late Councillor Farrow talking about the carbon footprint from building electric cars compared to keeping old cars going. So I don't even regard electric cars as being that good for the environment, even in the short term. But at mass production and getting rid of old cars, it could still have a lot of time left in, but I digress. So therefore, I think this actually puts the entire council's climate strategy aligned in.
Can I just add, we've got an item coming to this committee in November, which is based on the natural environment, climate and ecology. And you'll be able to ask questions then, Louis, of Anthony Littlechild, who's the sustainability team manager, and Nick Ireland, who holds the responsibility for climate.
You can rent his car charger.
So anyway, right. I still have a few questions I need to ask you. Sorry about this. But I've spent a lot of time going over this, so I don't want to miss the point. We're now supporting 379 public charging devices, of which 104 are council sponsored. I was under the impression that we'd put no money into the council, into the chargers. Is that correct? So how are they council sponsored? Are we just providing the space?
providing the space and we're commissioning them in effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of my big queries on future chargers is that we have a local plan that's out for consultation. We will struggle to get enough electricity to build all those houses. There has to be something happen with the national grid for us to continue down this road. And I would ask that at some stage we ask for a paper to be produced on the national grid and what's happening to it. Because it's not for you, Chris, but it is for the council. And I'm not sure who will pick that up, but I think we do need to know as members where we are with the national grid. You hear lots of stories that, oh, it'll be all right on the day. It won't be in my day, that's for certain. But it does concern me. Right. Key performance indicators that you've raised. EV ownership, which now accounts for 5% of vehicles. And it says financial analysis indicates that EV chargers are not negatively impacting parking income. Now, I heard what you said, but we are allowing extra spaces. You've already said they could be reduced. Perhaps we should do them on the new EV chargers that we're going to put out, because I believe you're still looking to put a few out. So we don't lose that income, because we will have lost income on that. And I mean, one of the councillors raised very clearly, and it's every time I come here, you struggle to get a parking space in the car park opposite, but there's 3 bays there that aren't being used. Now because of a decision we took a few years ago, we've got some super data coming out of our car parking. The difficulty is it doesn't actually tell you if it's an empty space, as I understand it.
That graph there now. We're bringing that data together, just park data and machine data at the moment, into a Power BI to help us understand what occupancy looks like across the car parks at any given time. So I'm just growing that at the moment, and the only reason why we can do that is because of the new machine. And we wouldn't be able to look at that data, and that's why I can, sit here and say Fullerton Park very differently to other car parks, the way that it fills up.
Yeah.
The rest of our car parks all peak at lunchtime. I'm taking a look at the graph now, and Fullerton Park peaks at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I can see when it's filling and how it's filling, but I also look across Dorchester as a whole and know that there's very few hours in a year when we're hitting capacity across our car parks. So although yes, you're correct in what you say, to put those 2 bays in, we've lost a bay. That capacity is elsewhere in other car parks. So rather than us losing that money, they're moving to other car parks. I'm sure you're aware of it. As far as I can tell from this information, and the revenue staying good, and yourself, I'd be the first one to jump on that.
I mean, I did say the other day, in fact, I think it was at the Harbours meeting yesterday, we just had a cracking summer. So I would expect car park charges to come in quite well, and thank God they do. Right, Chris, item 1.5. I'll read it so you don't have to worry about it. A total capital investment exceeding 19 million. That makes it sound as if this council have invested 19 million.
Oh,
that's 19 million from outside sources, isn't it?
Yes. So the only money that is allocated to this is 600,000 Dorset capital funding that was allocated some years ago. We haven't drawn it down, but it was put towards our pilot as a form of match funding, but we haven't accessed it yet. So it's there allocated, so we haven't spent.
So I assume that's sitting in reserves.
So yes,
yeah, good.
Yeah, but all of the other money is government or private sector.
Right. In your paper, you write that some of the delays on some of the installations are down to legal issues and electrical supply issues. I query why we're starting the work without having those sorted out in advance. Because I think the paper says that the work has continued for longer than expected, with bays being closed off for over 6 months. That's loss of parking revenue.
Yeah. So as much as we can, and those are rare instances, I should say, and that refers to one Langton Road, specific one Langton Road. We do as much as we can. So we do a feasibility study. We look at it. What has occurred and frequently occurs is that the information that we get from the distribution network operators, so either SSEN or National Grid, the data that where they think the cables are is often
I remember that's
wrong. And so, I mean, that's a case where with Langton Road, there are cables underground that weren't picked up when we did the first feasibility study, and etc. And that has led to a lengthy sort of legal discussion, shall we say, with SSEN, which I think we're getting close to resolving. But that's quite typical. I mean, there are so many legal and land issues that don't come to light until we're actually sometimes on site. And they can take a long time to resolve.
What I would say as a recommendation is that until we've cleared everything, we know exactly what we're facing. We don't cut off car parking spaces. I'm fairly passionate about car parking, as you've probably gathered.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we don't make ourselves as a council look silly.
Yeah.
I remember the ones that I'm trying to think which car park it was in Weymouth, where we had a big area cordoned off for some time whilst we were waiting for an electricity supply. Local. Yeah. And again, that didn't make us look too good in the eyes of the public. So I would ask that consideration be given that we check all the legal issues and we check the power supply as best you can. I'm very aware because I saw some of the original maps where the cables were, and when we dug in, I think it was a Verwood hub. It was a few meters out, not even close. And we had to then obviously do something different. I'll give you one more question, then I'm going to give you space to breathe. On page 243, you talk about the number of units installed. In the period 21 to 24, we produced 89, and since 24, we've only produced 15. Is this becoming part of a new policy, or is it just that we're struggling to get those sites adapt?
We're struggling to get those sites. We've gone for the low-hanging fruit. We're now in the difficult stuff.
Okay.
So it's finding sites and bringing people along.
Yeah. The reason I raise that again, all this paperwork is in the public domain, and we need to make sure the public have answers to questions that they may think of. Right, has any member got any other question? Doing better than they did last month, just let me say that. Right, I'm going to go back to the agenda. I'm going to thank you for your time. It's always a difficult subject, Chris, because not everybody is online with electric vehicles or electric charging. I am going to make sure that at the next climate meeting, we fully understand the target dates that are set, because there seems to be some differences on which target dates are with who, because the national target date is still 2050. I still don't think that's going to be achieved, but that's a personal opinion. I don't have any data that will support that, but we do need to know what our aims are for everybody.
it is worth just emphasising that those were those figures that I flagged up, 2030, 2040. Those are not targets. Those are predictions.
No, I understand that, but there was a further discussion that went on about 2040, whether that's the council's target for our own buildings and vehicles, which I think it is, because I think I don't think we've altered the national target, which is 2050. But I need to get that clarified now that it's been raised in this meeting.
You're correct. It's the target is for Dorset Council to be carbon free by 2040, not Dorset to be council to be carbon free. Just for clarity.
Right. Where are we next? Yep. Works programme. You've seen the works programme. We've only got 2 items on for next month, as I understand it. Is that right? You've got natural environment and the review of the committee's performance on risk dashboards.
We're missing a page.
Right. On the 20th of November, we've got our future council, the programme and transformation. We've got performance scrutiny, annual complaints report, and the natural environment, which is when I shall want some answers on these dates. I hear what you say. I just want to get it.
That's all right, Joe. I just
clarified. But thank you for doing that for me. So that's the programme. Then when we move into January, we've got the budget and medium-term financial plan. That's going to be an interesting discussion. And the performance dashboard. For those that have had access to the performance dashboard, I hope you're playing with it. And I mean that in the nicest way, because we need to iron out any bumps and bumps that are in it. I don't think you'll find very many. Knock and I have worked quite closely with the team that are putting this together, and I've got to say it looks pretty good. So it can be a very, very useful tool for scrutiny. Okay. Here's that. So next on the agenda is the executive arrangements forwards plan. Scrutiny.
No, it's just all of the cabinet floor plan, just if there's anything on that needs to be.
Okay, it's nothing for us to do tonight.
Nothing for us to do.
Okay. Item 10 is urgent items. Item 11 is exempt business, and we managed to avoid that. Now, before we close down, Anthony, can you read the recommendations back, please, from this committee to either the officers or the cabinet? Don't say you pressed delete.
I didn't press delete. So I had the consideration be given to making the prices for electric vehicle in Dorset council car parks physically visible to inform customer choice. And then there was a request for clarification around the exact number of rapid charge points that was for the EV one. Didn't have it. The MG property updates as a specific recommendation.
Right, there was one specific recommendation, and that's on the paperwork we've got. We list 2 other areas. One is the council tax side of it, because it doesn't tell us how much we're paying for the empty properties. I think that's fairly important. I can't think what the other one was. Just bear with me.
There was a specific reference for 0072 to be fed back, but I didn't have that as a.
If you would for me, please.
Yeah, I was asking for it to be fed back.
Yeah. And I asked for some updates from Jess on some of the questions that were left unanswered.
Yeah.
So if you can put that on there as well, just as a reminder to Jess. Although I've got to say she's very good in a very difficult spot. Right, members. Before I actually close the meeting, I'm going to do something that I should probably get into trouble for. No, I'm not going to talk about hydrogen. Well, I could if you like. I can keep the meeting going for several hours. I'm disappointed by the attendance tonight because the officers have given their time up and we're several members short. Now, I know Lacey Clark is on a very difficult period that he's had to do something that pulled him out of tonight. So I accepted the chair, but I'm very disappointed that we've got so many vacant seats. And Alex, thanks for coming.
Always, Chair.
Because quite seriously, your input is valuable. You talk a lot of good common sense, and but I am disappointed. And I think we just need to, if people don't want to come to these, then don't be on the committee. And I know we've had struggles like this before, but the officers are here. We've got 2 of the portfolio holders here. I've got one on screen.
You got 3.
Jill's here.
Oh, Jill's here as well. Yeah. So we had a number of people here that were giving up their time to come and explain to us. So I'm going to say I'm a bit grumpy that we've got a very small attendance. And I think it's very sad. Right, I'm now going to close the meeting. Thank you for your time. And I'm closing the meeting at what time? 21:02. Which is a record after last month.
Well, anything to be a record after last month.